22 or 23 years ago. I'm only 44, so, but pretty much that's what I've been doing for the last almost 25 years. I don't know, that's the gray hair. I will bring up my first computer. That is the one I was using in the 80s, a Tandy color computer. And I bring that up because it gives me a different perspective, and sometimes I have to recharge. That was over at the Star Trek display. So if you say I'm a nerd, a geek, or whatever, I'm perfectly fine with this. I don't find them as insults. I wear that like a badge. Consequently, because I started with computers at a very young age, and if any of you remember the green blinking cursor, and it didn't do anything interesting to a lot of people. To me, it was like a portal to a new world. But I think of computers as something that work for me, that they are just basic devices that are programmed by people like me to do tasks. I don't ever like to ascribe any intelligence to them that people do, like they're scared of AI systems and things like that. It's just some computers. They all have a purpose. The thing to keep in mind right here in 2019 is we have not yet built an AI system smarter than a 3-year-old. Yes, it could probably play chess better than a 3-year-old, but it can't even identify animals as well without a ton of programming, a monster data center, and we're like, it still got the elephant wrong. So they're not as intelligent as people think, but I think them a lot from the perspective of starting out at the very beginning with technology. This is always a fun infographic, and as this title of my talk, if you've been to this talk before, the title is the only thing that really stays the same. I change out all the slides because, well, the internet keeps changing, technology keeps changing, so this pretty much gets re-changed all the time. The content is similar, but there's going to be a whole lot of different stats, and we'll start with what happens in an internet minute. This is one of the things that becomes very difficult to scale up, and I've seen these memes and things going around of the difference between 1 million and 1 billion. It's almost hard for people to understand, but when you talk about in 1 minute, there's going to be 18 million texts sent, over 1 million people a minute log into Facebook, which has the stats later. Currently, Facebook has 1.5 billion daily active users. That's their current metric. So, and if you think about that a second, you're like, it's a lot of people. That's not just a lot of people. That's a percentage of the planet, a pretty significant. And when you think about there's only 300 million Americans, you're like, wow, there is 4 times the population of America on a single platform. That's an interesting thing to think about. There's about a spent online there. That number it is crazy. When you look at any of these numbers, you're just like, wow. Now, there is no cloud, it's just someone else's computer. This is something that we kind of joke about because everyone just says, it's in the cloud. Where is it at? Well, it's here, and in its data centers. These are actually a couple of pictures just from Google's data center. I just like to show people, like, these are interesting. I've got to visit some of these places. It's kind of, geek heaven, so to speak. They are as empty as they look. They are, some of these are 100,000 square foot warehouses filled with computers. And the weirdest thing to look at, if you look at them from like a Google Maps view, is the scale scope. And then you go, wait a minute, what's that thing in the corner? Oh wait, that's the 20 parking spots because there's 10 people working there in a 100,000 square foot warehouse. Full of computers. They're also really loud. You got to put headphones on in some of them because of all the fan noise and stuff. But this is where all the data lives. If you ever wonder what some of that looks like, I just like to mention some of the back-end technology. It does land somewhere, and it's here. They're kind of the factories of today. So who is the digital you? So all these companies have different ways of tracking your data and accumulating something about you. And they may not know you by name. They know you by signature, by ID. So first we'll start with digital identity, and individuals' most basic identifying traits, name or IP address. What I mean by that, you may have seen it in there in some crime show. We tracked his IP address to his house. So whoever provides your internet, Comcast, Wide Open West, AT&T, they have a address they've assigned to your house, and that is at least the first piece. But of course, you're not the only one at your house. You got you, family, other people using it, but there's pieces of data they start gathering, like, okay, we know where this IP address belongs here in Southgate, Michigan, so that's a piece of derived data that they're picking out. And for, if you're in the real estate business, if you're gonna do targeting ads, you go, I don't want people in Southgate, California, I want them in Southgate, Michigan, so they're not using city, they use geography based on things like IP address. Digital persona, the content and social behavior shared with networks, personal network status updates and reactions. This is where Facebook is pretty much the king of doing this and watching who you interact with and figuring out how to market to you based on that and what they can derive about the groups you hang out with, the things you click like on Facebook, and any type of indicators they can get. Digital footprints, the digital imprints passively left behind from online or physical activities. this is where our phones are also gathering and building up another data set of everywhere you go. Pretty much every phone has a GPS in it now, so there's a statistic for where you're at all the time. And that's another piece of derived data. You can do targeted ads now based on just physical location of people on phones. And you can actually go a step further in restaurants, like downtown areas frequently use this. They can focus an ad and say, show me people only within 200 feet of here, and then show them the ad if they're wandering around on their phone. Oh, look, there's a sale here. They can do things like that level of targeting and are doing it off of that type of data.
Do they actually call it digital fencing?
Yep, digital fencing or geofencing, yep, absolutely. And it gets that targeted because with GPS in the phone, they can say 100 feet. They can drill you down really close to say, because we don't want to, and when you're from a business standpoint, you don't want your ad dollars wasted on people that wouldn't be walking by your store in a downtown area. We've gotten to targeting, so it's actually made advertising much more effective than it's ever been before. Derived data, the results of combining and analyzing the user data and consumer profiles. And the derived data can be, and even for people not using Facebook, this can be a correlation of all the places you went shopping online. So you can say, well, I don't use data at Facebook, Tom, so they're not deriving any data from me. Do you use online? Do you use Google at all? They're deriving data from it. They're doing analysis and are creating a digital footprint of you and trying to figure out what ads to serve you best. And if you're ever wondering, because this comes up a lot, people are talking about things and they see an ad pop up on their phone. I was just talking about that. They aren't listening. Turns out, one that's technically challenging to do, to actually turn it into a full-time listening device, not impossible, but it's really challenging task. And deriving the data is easier from these methods than it is from listening to the random things you talk about and showing you ads. So although people like to think that way, that they are doing that, they're actually not. Yeah.
The one thing is be very careful because it's a site that's not really like Joe and anybody else know about, because it appears in there and all of a sudden you're getting these.
Oh, there's constantly a history. Matter of fact, one of the other pieces that's being sold all the time about you is companies like Comcast. They opened up the ruling over 2 years ago now. Comcast, AT&T, they can take all the data that they see coming from your house, just what websites you visit, for example, and they sell that data as marketing data. They're like, people in Southgate like to visit these sites. They just build marketing sets all the time just because you have an internet connection. So that's a really, it's a lot going on all the time. I don't know if it's necessarily good or bad. I don't ever try to make that distinction. I just like to make people aware of it. Because from a business side, it's handy having advertisements that are relevantly going out to people. From the other side, I kind of like an ad that's something for what I want, not something I don't. So giving me a more targeted ad, because we realize ads are the exchange, that's the agreement. I get to use Facebook for free or whatever service for free. I have to watch an ad. If I watch it on TV, they can only assume and derive it from, I like this television show, so I must like these ads. They try and do a matching. That's a real broad. I guess you get real specific when you do it online. Now we'll start with the threats to the digital you. Who's after you? And this is the not advertising people. This is going to be the digital threats that you face all the time. So types of hacking that goes on. Identity theft. There's a real popular one right there. So people are always, this has been going on forever. It's not like the internet made identity theft a thing. It was going on before. It just took snail mail and people trying to impersonate you and opening a credit card in your name. This happened before the internet. The internet just made it a whole lot easier. So that's obviously a concern. Credit card fraud. Sudden unauthorized charges like that appeared on my card exactly 7 days from today, 7 days ago. Someone lifted one of my credit cards from a skimmer. We pretty much have a good feeling of the blessed place we were before it got skimmed, but credit card company, they issued me a refund, and it happens. Mark will tell you, it happens probably way too often. Then I think the banks generally have a whole process for dealing with it because they're dealing with it all the time, but obviously this is a big concern, credit card fraud. Virus, worms, spyware, malware. So these are all those little things that they get on your computer. Some of them are to inject ads and whatever they're looking to do, whether it's inject an ad, get you to go to the site, get you to click on something. There's some nefarious things they're doing, and these are the old time, been around for years on the internet. But we're actually seeing a little bit of a decline in them. There's just not as much money in it. It turns out because so many companies, who hasn't turned on the news and at least once a week, some big company, Equifax or any of these companies have misplaced all your data and it's wandered around the internet somewhere. So it turns out you're worth less now, so they're attacking your identity less because it turns out it's really cheap to buy identities online. It's quantity, it's a market game. Once there's too much of something, it becomes really inexpensive. So This is what they're doing now. This is the real attack that is crazy. Now, this is a slide I left in here from 2017, and it's ransomware. They found out that people will really pay, because, well, first, no one backs up. So they are banking on the fact that you don't have backups, or if you're a business, the cost to restore those backups is more money than we're gonna charge you. What a ransomware does is it grabs the files on your computer, it encrypts them. Really good encryption. They've gotten really talented at this. And you get a ransom note that says, give us X dollars. Recently, there was 22 cities all attacked at the same time in Texas, and millions of dollars. City of Baltimore, they spent, so far, I think they're at 60 million in losses for the whole city was shut down. It got so bad at the city, they were shut down for so long with the ransomware that they couldn't even sell houses because you couldn't even go to the register of deeds, you couldn't get a house inspected. The entire city turned into chaos for several weeks while they tried to restore systems. And they know the options are, tell the city they can't do anything or pay our ransom. We're only asking for $2 or $3 million. And this is why they said this was $209 million back in 2016. This was just the first quarter, and these are the ones we can track. They're seeing the ransomware payments exceeding $40,000 a day, just in payments that we're able to track. This is just the market share we know of ransomware. It's turned into huge business. There's speculation because of cybersecurity insurance. A lot of people say, get cybersecurity insurance, and the insurance companies will pay it frequently. So now there's even more money in the market, and we found out at least one group of hackers took the time to target companies that only had cybersecurity insurance because they knew they could pay. So they actually went and targeted a bunch of cities in Florida, and they found the commonality between all the cities that were targeted was they all had the same insurance provider. So once they found out, and by the way, this is most city council meetings are public. So people are like, well, how are they getting this data? I don't know, they went on the city council meetings website, and they go, oh look, there was an order to approve, and a quick Google search can find this, an order to approve this company as our cybersecurity insurance. And the hackers are so brazen, they made a phone call after they encrypted a couple of the places. They didn't even put the ransom on the city, they called their insurance agent. They didn't want to waste the time of talking to the city, pass it on to insurance. They just called the agency, we encrypted this city and you insure them, this is how much we want. Like, it is, yeah, I mean, it's like any business. We want efficiency. And even if you're a criminal enterprise, you're looking for efficiency. When you talk about, the millions of dollars that this is, we've already so far that we're aware of, there's been over $1 billion in transaction-related ransomware globally. It's insane. So these are just some of the numbers here out of the US at $40,000 a day when we can track it. Pretty much all of it's done, in case you're wondering why we can't find these people. It's done via Bitcoin and money exchanges overseas. So basically you pay them in Bitcoin, they bring it over to a money exchange where we lose track of the names that were attached to it, and voila, the money gets wandered off. And frequently, pretty much, if you go to say the forums, these are all foreign speaking, frequently Russian. There is no rules in many of the former Soviet states on this. Matter of fact, there is a mentality from them of, haha, these Americans, we just take money from them, bring money in. So you have to protect yourself from them. Our law enforcement, they're outside of their reach behind another nation state with a non-extradition. So it's not, people ask me, well, we just gotta go find them. I'm like, no, they're very hard to find people. Now, the interesting part, they're actually got a good reputation. About 96% of the people who pay the ransomware get their data back. They only got a 4% loss. That's impressive for criminals who steal and lock your stuff up, that they actually have such a high success rate. It's actually interesting. Yeah. They call you a customer. Like if you talk to them, and some of them actually make phone calls for this because you're doing large money transactions, and they'll give you like a proof of some of your files. They'll decrypt a couple of them for you to prove they actually can do the rest of them. They negotiate back and forth with them all the time.
Great customer service.
They actually have pretty good customers, and they call you a customer. They'll refer to you. I've heard from people. I've never dealt with any of them directly. I've heard they're actually quite polite. So they think of that. They're asking for $2 million for a city ransom. And it's negotiable. They'll start a number, and you go back and forth. That's what these insurance companies do. They have special teams that are used to negotiating with them, and it's become like a process. And there's only about 7% loss. And what happens is when you're doing mass encryption, you're trying to do it faster than whatever tools they have to protect them. So occasionally that software that they are running goofs up something at one of the places they hit. So sometimes there are losses that get incurred. So they sometimes just have data loss, like, well, sorry. And they'll apologize, but yeah.
Maybe you're getting to this, but what is the cost comparison from that insurance to cloud backups?
Cloud backups are way cheaper. So.
Why would you not?
That's a great question. We ask it all the time when we pick up clients who we can't believe they have no backups or have called us because that. Backing up is, and I have some slides at the end of that, so backing up is so inexpensive, but what's happening, even for the companies that have backed up, when they find out they have backups, they will sometimes negotiate down. One of them started at $1 million and ended up being, they charged them $6,000 because what happens is there's a ratio of business. From a business owner standpoint, you have two options. I pay the bad guys, which seems wrong, but I pay some team to do the restores, even though we have backups. If the cost of those restores exceed the ransom, you just made a business decision. Do we stand on our morals and pay? It's going to cost me X amount of downtime to do it because we have to replace all these systems and reload all these systems with our current backup. That's going to take this much time, which incurs downtime, which means business losses. Or give these guys $6,000. And the average restore for some of these companies, when you talk about replacing and having to restore 200, 300 workstations in an office versus just run the software and it reverses what we did after you pay the ransom. So sometimes that's why they're paid out. And in some of the insurance places, the FBI actually changed the wording on their website which was never negotiate with them, never pay, to we understand there's going to be businesses who pay. Our answer's still the same, but we do understand this. They've kind of changed the wording and lightened up a little on it because it just comes down to a business continuity. How much downtime can your business afford? And by the way, some of the cyber insurance includes not just paying the ransom, but also covering your downtimes and things like that. That's, it's business loss prevention, essentially, business loss insurance. It's crazy, but it's happening. By the way, if you're wondering who it's happening to, they realize some of the big companies have it figured out and they're not often as hit. It's the smaller companies because they can't afford the IT, they know they don't have backups, they don't spend on technology, they just don't put the time or effort into it. And frequently, a lot of the companies, that's one of our biggest ways of acquiring clients is they got hacked and now they're trying to sort it out, but they never spend $1 on any of the protections needed until it was too late. And they've just said, well, I've never needed it before is the most common answer I get from them. And statistically, I have a company that's rolling the dice right now. They don't do anything. We've mentioned to them when they've lost stuff, we were able to recover stuff, and they still don't have a backup. They're a law firm with 7 attorneys. I'm like, you guys understand downtime. Like when this was down, nobody was working. They're like, yeah, but they still don't want to spend the money to this day. It just blows my mind. They're like, we keep it on thumb drives, and they have really vague answers, and yeah. So we run into it a lot. It's definitely a problem. Now, why ransomware has become, this is one of the craziest stories. I won't go too in depth in it, but we all familiar with like how affiliate marketing works, how, I have a product and you be an affiliate and you resell this product and you get a commission on it. This is a common theme. The ransomware people figured this out really well. So there's a small group of ransomware developers that realized that the majority of people don't know how this software works, but they're able to write really crafty emails and get people to click on links. So they resell it as a service for a 40% commission. So you get to keep 60%, we take 40% of the cut. There's an entire, they have a customer service desk, they have tickets they can open just like any support, and they let them resell ransomware as a service, and they've titled it, the ransomware as a service business model. It's fueling it more because these guys going, and the question becomes, is these couple people that started this, obviously they're facilitating it, but they're not the ones actually doing it, so how much of the law are they breaking? And also they don't have to deal with the negotiation part. And this can be really anyone because the barrier to entry isn't knowing complicated software. The barrier to entry is just having a victim that will click on a link if I send it to them. So this is one of the biggest threats that wasn't even in my slide deck several years ago. It's such a minor thing before, now it's become, if you didn't hear, Pitney Bowes was shut down for 24 hours. They just got hit. So they do target big companies when they find an edge. So someone found an edge in there, and they didn't say whether or not Pitney Bowes pays the ransom. That's not a small arbitrary company that got shut down for 24 hours and things like that. So let's talk about how do they attack. And phishing and spear phishing are pretty much the two ways. Spear phishing is going to be when you attack someone very specifically. It's a customized attack. We know something about you. We know where you work. We know you are likely to click on this link. We can craft it around there, be like, hey, Mark, check out this real estate link here, or something like that. You know something about the person. You know something real specific. Versus broad phishing is very automated, less sophisticated, like, hey, your Bank of America account needs a password change randomly. Just click this link and type in your password. So you'll see things like this, like someone has your password, just very generic one. It's going to someone, and yeah, they have a little link there that looks like, if you stare, well, look, myaccount.google.com-security settings page.tk. You have to really look at them to do that. If the things you could do to protect yourself against things like this is keep a close eye on, did you ask for a password reset? Never follow the link in your email. Even if you really think you might have done it, go to the website, accounts.google.com. Make sure you type in the right site and change your password there. Change your password. If you got a notice that your password may have been reset at the bank, don't click the email. Go to the bank's website. Log into whatever bank you're using, hopefully Mark's Bank, and log in there, and okay, there's no concern. Just things like that. Just don't click them onto your email, especially unprompted when it's random like that.
Excuse me, Tom.
Yeah.
Is it, how often, well, we're thinking LastPass.
Yeah.
So how often do you change those passwords in, or do you just get one basic password?
Yeah, I'll cover LastPass. Yep, I still got some slides in there. I'll talk about password management. So this is another one which we titled it with a familiar brand. So it says, Microsoft Outlook, MS Outlook 94. Now, service.out1ook.com kind of looks like Outlook if you glance at it. If you didn't have your glasses on, it's early in the morning. It says your password for a Microsoft account is expired. For your security settings, will cease to work. Oh, there's an immediacy in this. So now these are still generic ones that we're talking about. And then click to change your password. It's MS Outlook, and that's service.outlook, but / MS attacks reset HTML. It's going to take you somewhere it's not. And these are frequently how a lot of these people get into your passwords, get into your email. Let's think. And of course, the Netflix one. Your account's on hold. You're like, oh no, I want to watch the new thing that came out on Netflix, but my account's on hold. I just got this email. Let me go reset my Netflix password, and then they have your Netflix password. And one of the problems with all of these is when they collect these passwords, people reuse passwords a lot. We're going to cover that like Harrius shortly, but that's a real problem where people reuse the passwords. Now, spear phishing starts with the social engineering aspect of it. We learn something about the person through LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I have Google Groups, so I don't feel like deleting that because Google Groups is no longer a thing. But we do it in the technology, and the word we use is OSINT for open source intelligence. It's the reconnaissance a hacker is going to do on you to try to make a determination of what they learn about you. What do they know about you that we can leverage, and what would be something compelling for the position you have at a company for you to click on it? So we're going to say, like, maybe you're someone who handles the budget, so we're going to send you a copy of the budget. We've also seen them say, hey, would they know someone else, a coworker, and they can read your Facebook post. Maybe you're mad because a coworker got a raise, and maybe we sent an email, payroll info, and you're going, oh, I clicked that. I want to know just how much that raise was. I want to know how much other people make in the company. They find something based on where you work. They make it seem compelling for you to open, and this is where they're using social cues they can find about you online to learn something to make you want to open it, and they've targeted you because they know if they gain the privilege you have at that company, that would give them things they need. We've seen these type of attacks. One of the crazier ones that we have a trucking company, and the way they had transportation, they re-registered a domain, so it's the same company name, but they transposed the I and O in transportation. So they made it look like the CEO of the company was emailing the chief financial officer. It was from a valid email address that they had registered, but it was a domain that was one letter off, but it looks like their name if you stared at it, and they copied his profile picture and his signature at the bottom of his email. So at some point they had received an email from him, and they just said, oh, there you go, and they wrote an email for a wire transfer. And it was because he switched over some payroll stuff. Hey, while I'm da-da-da-da. And they were clearly watching him. They did this while he's out of town. So he's not there to respond. They knew he was at something, and he was, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, we're going to be switching his payroll. Can you wire this money over to this and stuff like that? We also seen one of our manufacturing clients targeted. They were on one of those, I guess you call them corporate junkets or whatever. They were down in Florida, and they were looking at materials procurement, and they said, hey, found this new vendor while I'm here in Florida, and you should just wire money to them, and we're going to get an order of steel from them and have them shipped to our factory, blah, blah, blah. Seemed like a legit email. They wired the money right away because they were excited. Knew this was a great deal, a great price on steel, everything. The person knew what a good price on steel would look like. They took the time to, you could probably Google this stuff pretty quickly, find out there, and they were in they were doing it from his email address. His email address was his company name 1234. The password was. So when he said, I can't believe they hacked me, I was like, I can't believe it took this long to hack you. Is my yeah. So
you went to spear phishing before I could catch you.
Yeah.
Question. So
then that's
For a
different.
secure site,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah, and one of the examples a lot of places still use. I'm glad they expire, by the way, but a lot of places now chose to expire the links. What they'll do is they'll send you an email and they'll say you have 10 minutes to click this link in this email. I like those because years ago they didn't have that. So if someone ever got into your email, that's one of the first things they would search for. You're like, oh, it's just my email. What are they going to do? Even 2 years ago, there was a password reset link sent to you for some site, and they're going to look for it, and they're going to find that password reset. They just type it in as a quick search in your email, and they find that old email, and if that link didn't expire, they may try to reuse it.
That example you used with the transportation company, you know, I sit in these types of forums quite a bit. My company puts on forums like this, and a lot of times people don't even really completely understand or don't, you know, it doesn't sit with them that that's totally possible. But that exact same scenario happened with one of my customers downriver like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Exact same scenario. You know, the CEO emailed all of their customers, and their customers were wiring money to this fake,
Yep.
this fake business.
It is crazy, and they're targeting these small businesses because they just lack the training. They're not investing in cybersecurity in a lot of this. They're just, you know, sometimes they're just struggling by as a small business, and so they just don't put the time and effort into this. So it's really, they become the easiest targets for all these hackers. They just go online, find them, they look at the company. First indicator that the company doesn't spend on technology, they see a website that hasn't been updated in 10 years. That's like the first, oh, this guy, they don't care about their website. I bet that's the first indicator that there is probably no technology in this company. And I spend time with people who work in that industry of hacking and things like that. So it's really interesting to look at what they're looking at, because the larger companies hire what they refer to as a red team to come and test their security. And I have a few people who work as red teamers, as we call them, who go around trying to break that security. And they'll tell you all the cues they're looking for to target a company and how easy and pretty much, like my friend Xavier says, red team always wins. It's really, he's rarely done an engagement where he didn't find some levels of success. One of my other acquaintances that does it, one of the things that was unexpected but really fun was it took him less than a week to get into a large bank. And the unexpected part was when he turned in his what he had gathered and what he had done, because he also did it without getting caught, was a selfie in the vault. He said that was like the crown. He goes, I made that the first picture in the portfolio we handed to him. They had no idea, like, how'd you get in the vault? He's like, dude, he goes, I just told the guy that I was going to do it. Another one I like, it was so great, this guy Jake, I've shared, he's a great storyteller, but one of the things he told, it was a large hotel chain, a very luxurious hotel chain, that he was going to get in there and put his hand on the thing that could turn off the power. He was going to do it in his pajamas. And his bonus was not only being able to stand in his pajamas in the back room where all the power was, he took a picture with all the chefs. He's a great talker, and he got back there, he goes, you know, and he took pictures of everything in her fridges. He's like, I had access to your fridges, I had access to all your back-end food. The chefs took a selfie with me. He goes, you guys have no security here, like top to bottom. I just went and visited like every critical site. If I was actually here to do something more than prove I could do it, you would have a big problem. He also accidentally robbed the wrong bank, which makes another whole side story. He got a bank mixed up, and he went and robbed the wrong bank to prove he could get something. They're like, that's not our bank. He's like, well, now what do I do? He's got some fun stories. But a lot of these small businesses are being targeted very heavily, and it's part of the reason we're very trusting people. That's the nature of most humanity. It's a little bit different thinking when you have to think about security. You have to get your guard up. You have to be suspicious of things all the time. It's very important. And like I said, small businesses have become, because the big businesses go through some of these training. My wife worked for Quicken Loans for a while. They go through constant training on this type of thing. They have an entire team that tests you, sends you phishing links, and they have this little thing. They put a fish on your desk if you clicked a phishing link because you won the little award of the day, the phishing link of the day, and then you also won some training. So they're going through a lot of this at these big companies. That means they're harder to target. So they just go after all small businesses because, well, you'll click on stuff and until you go through some training or really put some thought into it, it can be a challenge. What's your password? This is, so the thing about the Netflix accounts and all these other accounts that they steal, and we had a call from a customer who couldn't believe someone guessed her password, which was her dog's name with some other numbers, and it actually was a pretty good password. But the next question I had is, did you use that password anywhere else? She goes, oh, everywhere else. I was like, okay. Well, one of those everywhere else's was probably breached. Therefore, what's your username? What's your email address? Almost universally, we use email address as username for things. So we have an email address, we have a password. So if a company gets breached, that breach gets dumped into a list, and we go, they just take that username password combo and they start trying it. Oh, don't worry, no one's doing this manually. There's really cool automated tools that take these email addresses, and it actually makes a list. It's a really slick system. It can take it and test logins all over the place and give you a list of which one of those 2 million passwords that just got dropped from some company. Matter of fact, like a local company, StockX, just got their data breached. It's like 300 million people, I think, was in their database, 300 million usernames and passwords. They just take that combination, and once again, people are creatures of habit, and they don't want to type a long password to get one good password in their head, and they type it in. So that password works all over the place. And then, of course, then they're logging in. It's the same one you use for your corporate email. And don't think that by putting like a couple extra letters out there that someone doesn't do some pattern recognition and figure out that your password to Facebook ends in FB, but your password in Netflix is NF in the end, and they look for patterns in those, and they go, oh, okay, I know their patterns, so now I can get that. It's amazing. Password guessing works really well too, because who has a password of, like, fall 2019 or spring 2019 or summer? Those are still in use constantly. Just throwing it out there. This is one of the reasons password managers are a necessity. I don't think there's something, I used to say, hey, they're a good idea. I think they're an absolute, I've been using one for years, and I think everyone should be using one. They're just a way to manage passwords. The problem is, generally speaking, we just don't remember random things very well. So random strings of characters are very difficult to remember. There's always an exception. There's somebody that can just recite things, and I'm like, that's amazing, but it's certainly not me. So LastPass is one of my favorite ones. There's a few of them out there. You got 1Password, you got Bitwarden, you got, I think RoboForm has one. There's a lot of companies out there getting in the game. LastPass is one of the early adopters in the game. The good news is it's really inexpensive. They have a free version that does most all these features I'm going to cover. They have a family version for like $5 a month that gives you up to a handful of people. The $3 version a month, you prepay. They give you the monthly price, but I think they make you pay it yearly. But it's still, that was not much money. So you're talking like $30-something annually here, and you have a wonderful password manager that even allows you to easily share passwords with people. So if 2 people are using LastPass, this will allow you to easily share the password between 2 people without actually sharing it. You just know their email address, and I want to share my password with that person. You can do it. It also then will track all the passwords you share with people, and you can check a box and unshare it with people. This is actually really nice if you have a business and you have to share with your staff around you, because there's 2 things it does. 1, makes it easy to share with them. 2, you know what you shared with them when it's time for them to leave. And you can, it's actually a really handy thing. So now, without actually having to pass passwords around on Post-it notes, especially if they're complicated ones, or email them, which is worse, because that's not a good thing to do, because in case your email ever gets breached, this is like a solution that works for all the way around.
So Tom,
Yeah.
how do they protect themselves?
That's what I was just gonna ask.
Yes.
They've got
Well,
everything.
this is a good question.
So this is a great question,
Yeah.
and math is the answer. So LastPass came up with, the guy who actually founded LastPass, pretty amazing, talented guy, and he watched a couple things happen in the market that he realized was a big problem. There's a gentleman by the name of LeVar Ledison, and he owned a company called LavaBit, and LavaBit had this idea that we're going to create encrypted email, and everyone will want to use encrypted email. And then it turns out lots of people thought it was a good service, but he also had the keys that encrypted your email, and he had them in his pocket, and he's like, these are safe because they're with me, and I'm a trustworthy person. And then this guy named Snowden started using his email service, and he learned that those keys can be extracted painfully from you, and they will hold you as long as they need to get everything they need, and he had to decrypt his service. And that was what made the person that founded LastPass goes, you know what a good idea is? Not having the keys, because I happen to live in America, and I realize even the American government will compel a business to give up all security to find it, and they wanted 100% of it, not a specific user. They wanted all of it. And he says, if I don't have all of it, I can't be attacked. So what he came up with was a really clever thing that works with very advanced cryptography. He can encrypt everything and pass around. The back end, once you have something encrypted and locked, it's referred to a lot of times in the tech industry as a blob. It's an encrypted blob, because we don't know what it is. It's just a blob of data. The way LastPass, and a lot of the other ones have copied this business model, because once they've seen the math that went into this and said, oh, that's a clever way to do it. You have the key that unlocks the blob. I take the blob and just store it on my servers. If the government comes, or anyone, a bad actor comes and goes, I want the blob, have it. unless you know the password that unencrypts it, which by the way, there's no password reset on LastPass. Once you have your LastPass for its namesake, it's one password that unlocks all of them. The password you have unlocks the blob. You're actually, and it's transparent to you, you're unlocking that inside your browser. It's actually it's not like you're typing the password and it's being sent to the LastPass servers to unlock it. He actually came up with a method because browsers are actually very powerful. So it's part of your computer. It's almost like its own little world of operating system. So he puts the blob in the browser, you type in the key, and it stays there. And any changes you make to the blob gets sent back, never the unlocked version of the blob. So it's kind of a cool design, and by doing that, he has been compelled. He has a list of all the court cases where he's turned over the blob. He's like, here, have at it, guys, and they've never cracked any one of them because it's really, really strong encryption. It's a great service, and by doing that, he's done, like I said, two things. He's reduced the risk from government intervention for requesting it. He's also bad actors who would want to attack him. He's not much of a target. He doesn't get as many attacks because what are you going to get? You're going to get a bunch of encryption. It's well known how his system works, and other companies go, that's a great idea. And LastPass did it about 2 years before anyone else, so that's a good business model. So they've been very successful at it. They have had edge cases, in case you ever see like breach or something like that. They've had edge cases where they found like ways you could get fooled and things like that. What an edge case means is there was no default way to do it. There's no immediate threat. There was, if these circumstances lined up and someone sent you to the right page the right way, we're able to copy a piece of a password under extreme circumstances. Like the last one was found, if you filled in a password on a page, but opened it up, didn't click go, went to another page, there turns out someone opening up a new page was able to look backwards under the right circumstances and see the password you filled in because you didn't hit submit. How often do you fill in a password, not the next button is submit because you wanted to log in? So it's kind of like I said, edge case, and they fixed it right away. It was disclosed to the company and they fixed it. They've been really fast to fix any security flaws. One of the reasons I've always respected them, and I've listened to several interviews with the founders and I've looked at the technology they use, and it's why I trust them versus some of the other ones, but I know the other ones are based on the same principles, and so they're pretty solid products. And their fees are so, it's one of those, it's so inexpensive to do. This is one of those, why aren't you? And by the way, the free one, the only thing you lose in the free one is some of the sharing features. So if you just want to use it for you personally and not share it with other people, free one's unlimited. So that there's no limit how many passwords you can store it in or anything like that. So their pricing is very reasonable. They have business plans as well for businesses. They charge a little bit more.
Okay,
Yeah.
way over my
Yeah,
head.
that's all right.
Currently, I have a record of, I have multiple passwords.
Yes.
I'm all written down someplace.
Oh boy.
So if I wanted to do that, how do I get started? Do I have to go back to each website and change the password?
Not necessarily, and I'll show you how you get into that part here. So first, this is what it looks like when you log into LastPass. And LastPass has some import tools because, well, a lot of people do things like save their password in a browser. That is a horrible idea. Please don't do that. Yes. The problem with saving the password in a browser, Google has sent out warnings about it. They've left the feature in because people really like the feature. The reality is it's not a secure feature because that's actually just stored in an unencrypted method. There are lots of tools, like different plugins you get, like maybe you loaded some little coupon thing. Things that have access to your browser also have access to extract all of your passwords at once. And there's sometimes been some bad things in the store that do that, so that's why it's a bad idea, but they leave it in there. The other reason for password managers is I was looking and I was like, I got 759 things I log into regularly. I don't want the same password on all of them. It's pretty wild when you start expanding out just how many things I have in LastPass now. And it does help track all of them too, because it fills them all in for me and locks it all down. Now let's talk about some of the functional, what it looks like. These are my passwords for things. It generates this random thing and fills it in. So you sign up for a site, it fills in with a random password. When you go to the change password option, it comes up with a random password. The part you start with when you sign up for LastPass is you come up with your phrase. So I like to vacation in Hawaii 2019, whatever it is. And I say phrase because it's more, you want something that you can remember, that you can type, that is unique, but it doesn't have to be some unusual words, but longer is better because it's harder to crack a longer one. So you don't want to make your LastPass password. And what it does is when you log into LastPass, it unlocks all the passwords and you're not thinking about passwords anymore. And you can even say, I want to type this password in once and then don't bother me for 3 hours. So, and then for every site, it just generates these random passwords for you. And it's kind of behind the scenes when you're setting it up. It's actually pretty easy to use. I'm showing you what the passwords look like, but most of the time you don't see it. You just say, fill in site, fill in password. It just does it for you. And when a lot of the big sites like Amazon, Facebook, there's an option to auto change password. You don't have to do anything. So if you find out there's a breach on XYZ company, some of them, there's an option inside of LastPass to hit auto change password, and it just fixes it for you. You're like, oh cool, it's done. It'll go to the page for you and kind of do its magic. It's pretty cool. This is what it looks like when you're looking at an individual account, for example. This is my Tom at Lawrence Systems. Google password is right there. And it even keeps a history of all your changed passwords. So if you ever needed to know the different password changes, when they were changed, it keeps that record for you as well. So when you do change a password, it remembers the last one. That's actually kind of handy. Some places for identity, when they've had a problem, they will ask you what your previous password is. Well, if you're using passwords that are generated by LastPass, it's a bunch of random string of characters. That's a hard answer to give. The only pain in the butt part is if you have to read it to someone. That's that is one of the options a couple slides back was make pronounceable. You can do things like where it will do a try to put some words. It's making up a word, but it'll try to put something that's a little bit easier to say or all lowercase.
So make sure I'm grasping this. Going back to that.
Yeah.
You actually call for, say, if I want to go to Amazon, it's picking out this password for you automatically, and then
Yep.
it updates for you at the time.
Yep.
So I don't have to worry about any passwords anymore.
Right.
I don't have to worry about no special characters. Is that
Right. It makes your life so much easier. Well, I have introduced so many people to this, and this is like, it's like, they're like, this solved my life. I introduced Brett to it. I think Mark's Mark became a user from like 2 years or 3 years ago when I was doing this talk. It's just dead simple, and it's.
How does it know? I mean.
Oh, I'll show you. It's actually pretty cool. So,
To Tom, it's really cool.
dude, it's really cool. Well, I'll actually show you logging into a website. We'll get to some of the functional part. I also pulled this up right here. So I share my Amazon with 4 of my staff, my login to it. So I know I blurred their email addresses out, but you check boxes and I can share passwords with people. This is a great use for business because a lot of times you have common accounts that you don't, not everyone has their own login for because you just share a login for whatever it is. They allow you to do that. And once again, if you have to unwind an employee that as you're leaving, or you're just not friends with that person no more, you don't want to share your Netflix anymore, you can see, there's ways to see what all was shared with them. Also, by the way, when you share a password with someone, when I change my Amazon account, it changes it for them too. So if I do update my Amazon account and they already accepted a share, it updates it all for them, so it's just kind of a very automated, it just solves so many problems. This is what the business one looks like, so you can create shared folders and read-only passwords, invite. It has some more advanced options you can dig into for business where you can have like delegated permissions. I believe University of Michigan just switched to this for their entire back end. They use they have an enterprise version of this, and University of Michigan was just blown away by it. I was talking to the IT people there, and they're like, "Oh, this just solves so many problems of trying to get passwords for people." Because you can get a whole business corporate account set up with them, and then you could just delegate and share. But that whole concept of zero trust, where LastPass doesn't have to be trusted, the University of Michigan said that's a cool concept. We don't have to trust you. We can just use your product. You never have the keys to the university because these are the back-end systems that run, registration and all the student stuff. So they're very careful about security. The University of Michigan has not been in the news for security breaches. I've met some of their team. They're really on it. And this is one of the tools they chose to help protect their data. They're like, this just makes it easy. When I have to share a password with someone, just check a box and away we go. It will also, in the form fill, you can save your credit cards in there and everything as well. So when you go to a site, it can fill in the card for you. This is actually a feature I really like because 1, I buy almost everything online. 2, it will warn you when a site's asking for your credit card that you didn't expect it to. So this is a weird hack that someone come up with. Someone found out, because a lot of people autofill credit card by saving it in their browser. Someone found out that if I have a site that just asks for your name and address, but if I hide over in the corner, and these are nefarious sites, over in the corner but out of your visual range a credit card form, and you have your stuff saved in the credit card form, it'll say, oh, there's a credit card form, because the browser can see it even though they've moved it left of the screen where you don't see it. They've moved it under something else, and they capture credit cards this way because your browser's auto-filling things for you. Because how many people have autofill in their browser to fill in their name or their address? turn that off. LastPass will walk you through, you can turn that off as a feature. And what LastPass does, it will fill a form out and fill out a registration for you, but it'll say, hey, this site's asking for a credit card. And you're like, I don't think it should be. And you can stop right there and stop filling anything out in the site, because it won't do it without an implicit yes. So that's an important feature. It's also convenient, I don't have to get my credit card out and type those numbers in all the time.
So if you go and save your passwords on your browser, it always asks you to save it.
Yeah, say no.
Right, and now I know to say no, but at the same time, I've done it for so many times, you've already cleared my computer a couple times.
Yep.
But now I gotta go back and reset that password, and I forgot what it was, because
Yes.
it's encrypted up in the corner.
Right. So once you use something like LastPass, so let's say this computer dies, something terrible happens to it, it's got my LastPass on there. LastPass syncs between all the computers you log into it, even the free account. So if I get another computer, I go open up the computer, the first thing I do is load LastPass. I load LastPass, and then it starts filling in LastPass. Once you log into it, it says, hey, what's your master password? So you can unlock the keys to your kingdom, and you put your master password in the little plugin, and it goes to work filling in passwords again. So,
Don't forget that master password.
oh yeah, Brad, what happens when you forget the master password?
I was able to hack, honestly, I was able to hack my Google site to find it somewhere where I typed it years ago.
Yeah.
Now, I cleared that since, but I was able to find it, thank God, because I was just showing her, I have 87 different passwords on different things I visit and places I go, and I would have lost all those.
Yeah. So don't forget your master
Don't forget
password.
your master
Don't do what Brett did.
No, well, the hacks were because Tom showed me those hacks. So.
Yes. It turns out, even though I instructed him not to, when I introduced it to him a couple years ago, even though I instructed him to turn off the browser saving, he did not. But that actually saved him, because he did type his master password into it. So we were able to find the master password he used because he had typed it in and the browser saved it. So.
Now it's tattooed to me somewhere, and you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's an important thing, is that you have that. And like I said, this is the selling point that LastPass has. We don't know it, therefore we can't reset it. So if you ever got a notice about resetting your master password from LastPass, that's spam email, that's someone trying to fish it out of you. They don't have it. Like I said, it's part of their business model from the beginning when they started the company, was not to have that piece of information. They know there's a risk from usability, because people lose their password and get super angry at the company. I'm never using them again. I lost my password and they couldn't give it to me. They're like, yeah, that's kind of our business model. We care about security more than convenience. There's always trade-offs, and they chose the more difficult. But I think, they came out with it years ago knowing this would be a problem. And when I looked to see that there's 750 accounts I regularly log into with my business, granted, these are shared with many of my staff, that yeah, this is a great tool. When you fill out all the name and everything, you can actually, because I have an office profile and a profile for my business, so whenever I'm filling forms out, it's just so much nicer. You can put all your personal information in there. They also support two-factor authentication, which we're going to get into next with Google Authenticator. Now, what two-factor means is, first, we have a password. That's one factor of authentication, one thing you know. The next piece we need is something else. What is the second factor? A text message sent to your phone before you log in. Lots of companies use that. A rolling set of numbers that changes every 60 seconds based on what time it is. That's a common one used as well, because that's a second factor. That way, on the off chance that you're Brett and you saved your password in there, and now they got his LastPass password, they can't actually log in without his second factor of authentication. And there's a list of things they support, which is pretty cool. They have their own authenticator system, the Google Authenticator. Duo is actually a pretty neat company. They're founded right here in Michigan, and were just recently sold for $2 billion. The guy that owns it is a super nice guy. I've met him at a couple events. They also do security. Physical tokens is another option. They're called YubiKeys, where you have to plug in a physical key to unlock the computer. So they've got all the different second factor options if you care about more advanced levels of security. At the very minimum, starting with the basic, which is LastPass, and not worrying about the two-factor, I recommend it. But if you go, I'm not there yet, at least use LastPass. You're that much more secure and further along. This is what it looks like when you sign in. So you get these two little dots, well, three, I don't know how many dots are there, and a little one, and then we click at it. Now there's a one because I only have one login to Amazon, but if there's a site that has more than one login, like Facebook, I had 2 of them at the time, it puts a 2, and you just click the button, and which one do you want to fill in? These are the 2 potential options to log in with. So it's pretty simple to use from that standpoint. Two-factor authentication, a little bit more in depth on this. This is that pick any two, something you know, something you have, something you are. So your biometrics can be one where you can put a password, and a biometric is something you are, like your fingerprint to unlock your phone. But that's like one factor. Having a second factor, we'll cover phones more in a minute, but these are ways you can authenticate yourself to do a second step of verification. Now, the concept's not new. Years and years ago, just when you set up even to pay your utility bills, what'd you have? You had to tell them some personal information about you. You had to ask them, like, what was your favorite high school teacher, your dog's name, some other piece when you set up your utilities, so they could identify you over the phone with more than just one piece of information. So the concept's not new in terms of security. It's just gone more digital. This is actually a screenshot of what Duo looks like. A lot of businesses use this. A lot of things support this. And Duo's got a cool idea because what they do, instead of sending you a text message, it's actually a big green and a big red button. And when you log into something, and we've set up some businesses with this, it's kind of nice. Their phone comes up with the green and red button. The green button says, yes, finish the login. The red button says no. Basically, I always remind people once we set this up, if you're just sitting here and you're not logging in and it comes up, never press the green button. Someone has your password, but you have now stopped them. You now have two things of information. One, someone got your password. Two, you can rest easy because you said no. They may actually try again in a minute, and then you'll hit no again, and eventually it'll block them for trying, but now you know you have to change your password on whatever's prompting you. But they didn't get in. That's the most important factor. They didn't get into your things. This is supported on a lot of different things. It's just like when you get the text message that makes you panic a little from the bank or whatever when they send you a notice because now they've logged in, but you've stopped to put that second factor of authentication in there. That's huge to have that anywhere that's supported. Google has been supporting it forever. It can tie in a lot. Google's has some really cool options. They have their own, like you can just have your phone give a notice every time someone logs in. You can use their authenticator tool with the rolling numbers. So they have a lot of different options. It's really easy. If you're not sure how to do it with Google, if you Google two-step verification, it's under the little corner in the top with Google as of right now in 2018 under security. But if you Google turning on two-factor for your Google account, absolutely highly recommend it. It works well. If you're using the Microsoft account, if you have Office 365, you're using any of the Microsoft tools for your email, same thing, they support it. They have their own application. You load their app on the phone and it prompts you, did you just log in? We push this to all of our clients. It's something we highly, highly recommend because spoofing your emails it's such a disaster. Just like he had mentioned before having a client, once they get in there, they send emails to everybody. And if they would have had second factor authentication, I'll assume this client you're talking about didn't have a second factor authentication?
No.
Yeah. So that allowed them to assume that person's position, and a lot of us, especially for any type of sales and marketing, we have quite a list of contacts in there. And they can read through any of our previous emails, figure out what the most effective thing to send out would be, and start sending it out. So you don't want someone being you. These are free. This costs nothing to add this security to your account. Some people say, well, it's an extra step. Yes, it is. When you sign in, you can usually say, don't bother me for X days, and it prompts you like every 30 days to do it again. But it's worth it, trust me. Because dealing with people on the other side, especially when we had a guy get completely locked out of his account. They used his email account and started resetting all of his other accounts. They started doing password reset links. They made a mess. And we couldn't get back in. They changed all of his, they even set up two-factor after he didn't have it, and they set it up. So when we called Google, they're like, you have two-factor on, you just set it up. No, we didn't. So it was very difficult to get things back. Unwinding these messes is very, very difficult. The little minor inconvenience, it's 2019, these little minor inconveniences are annoying to have to do this, but trust me, they're worth it. Even Facebook, almost all your social media platforms, because you don't realize how valuable it is till it's gone. And this is, we've gotten a lot of business owners who have asked me about their help getting back Facebook account. Facebook's not a helpful company at all when it comes to getting it back. They will really assume that whoever logged in is the person, and then once they change the password, they still assume that person is not you. Good luck. They don't have great customer service. I think they're too busy for it and don't care enough. They're like, go sign up another account. Yeah. So turn it on your Facebook. You may not think it's that valuable. The bigger value may just be on someone becoming you and sending all your friends messages, and that can be bad. Let's dig into social media. This is a fun part. Speaking of Facebook, so 1.59 billion, I pulled these stats this morning, people on average log on to Facebook daily and are considered daily active users. Facebook's DAU number they have in their SEC filings. For June of 2019 was when this stat was published last. This represents an 8% increase year over year. Now, this is the part that blows my mind. Facebook only employs 40,000 people. When you have 1.5 billion people logging in and 40,000 people managing it, total at the entirety of the company. I don't know what percentage of those actually even work a help desk at all to help you. I bet not very many of that 40,000 number, but this probably leans to why there's a customer service problem. I got 1.5 billion people using my product, and only 40,000 people manning the stations. So they're an interesting company. And for scale and scope, last year their revenues I think were right around 24 billion. And to give some perspective of like a local company like General Motors, they employ 179,000 people and had 10.2 billion in annual revenues last year. So it's really interesting to see that small number of people, 40,000 people, managing or influencing in some way 1.5 billion. A percentage of the world population is on Facebook, and only 40,000 people at the helm making decisions. That's an interesting thing to think about. People go, what does it all mean? We don't know. This is a real-time experiment with humanity. We just connected humanity. Now what? There's not an A, B. We don't have another planet where we're going, what happens when you don't connect them? We have this planet, and we're all here, and we connected all of us. So we're seeing some interesting things. We're seeing like a collision of local cultures with global audience, and so we see things that are very interesting on Facebook. This is wrong, but I love this tweet. If you really want to get to know someone on a first date, just ask about their first pet favorite teacher and read all their emails. That's one of the problems. You share so much information online. This is the stuff people are able to do because of what you share online. Back to those secrets you had, those are frequently your email because you didn't have two-factor turned on. These are those questions they went through. This has happened frequently to politicians. What do a politician do when they're in for office, especially any large political office? They do interviews with magazines. They want to know their childhood. What was your favorite pet, so-and-so or such and such? And they'll tell all this. They'll have an expose on where they went to school. This has led to many politicians getting hacked because they just go, oh, I have all the answers I need. Hey, look, I know so-and-so's Yahoo account. The question was, where did you go to school? What's your favorite teacher? Wow, People Magazine, thank you very much. They just run down the list. And now it's even worse because we throw these things right on Facebook frequently. This is back to where I think computers work for me, and I'm always thinking about controlling the narrative. And so I use Facebook, which is not like a lot of tech people you see kind of steer away from it. I don't want to share my personal information. I said, well, I only want to share what I want to share. So I'm always thinking of it from a perspective of I'm controlling the narrative. But a lot of people were introduced to it. They go, cool, I can share with my friends. I can share birthdays and things like that. And it may make sense. But then if you also use that birthday somewhere else, there's a problem. So 68% of people with public social media profiles shared birthday information. 63% shared their high school name. 18% shared their phone number. I actually think it's more than that, but they said 18%. Shared their pet's name. This is actually what Paris Hilton, her dog, the only reason I know is because it was a good security topic. Her dog's name apparently is Teacup, and that was also her security question to reset her password on her iPhone account was, what's your dog's name? I'm like, it wasn't hard to find. Job hunting, I bring this up, and this goes both for employers and people who are prospecting looking for a job. Think about what you post on social media. Job hunting, 54% of companies did not hire a candidate for one of these reasons. This is a great on Career Builder. They were writing this because this has become a real problem for people who thought maybe it was funny to do the things, especially when you talk about growing up with social media. I did things that I'm glad are not, because I grew up in the 90s, they are not on any social media site. There's not a picture, evidence, or it could be a Polaroid that I hope is burned. I made poor decisions at 16 and 17 years old. I don't think there's anyone here who didn't make at least one poor decision. But when you grew up with social media, a friend may have taken a picture and tagged you in it. So controlling a narrative is a little bit more difficult being young. So you want to think about this and tell kids this if you have kids that are coming of age in this. Candidates that posted provocative or inappropriate photographs or videos or information. These are reasons they didn't hire people. Over half these candidates weren't hired for these reasons. Candidate posted information about them drinking or using drugs. I've seen a lot of that, and as someone who employs people myself, that's a concern. If you pull up their social media and they have pictures that you go, wow, bragging about how drunk you are. Doesn't sound like that's a Tuesday, I noticed you posted that. These things are looked at by these corporate companies. Candidate badmouth their previous company or fellow employees. That is watching people who are nothing but a rant on their Facebook of all the places they worked and how much they hated it. You kind of go, how much will they hate me? So it's about perspectives. You're controlling the narrative. Think about what narrative you're putting out there. Candidate lied about qualifications. Boy, I've seen people brag about that online. I got this job and I have no idea. I just told them I had something I didn't. Canada had poor communication skills. Yes, grammar matters. And someone's looking at your Facebook post going, that person doesn't English very well. They do not know the proper use of phrasing. That can be a fun problem. Candidate was linked to criminal behavior. Yes, we have I mean, I'm kind of thankful for the criminals who do brag and get caught on Facebook. But yeah, it's cool that they're doing that in some ways because we're catching someone, but it's also something where people brag about maybe quasi-criminal activity, and if you're someone's job searching you, they are looking at all these too. Matter of fact, there's companies that specialize, there's HR companies that specialize in digging up information about you off of social media. I have friends, because they have very higher positions in cybersecurity, man, they brought up MySpace. They're like, I don't know what, a guy had a copy of it. He had all my MySpace posts. And he goes, I Googled, I can't even find those. He goes, this company had it as part of his interview. He goes, good news is, 15-year-old me didn't say anything too stupid. But my friend's like, I was worried if I was getting a job. He goes, I remember seeing it. He goes, oh, I did kind of say that, didn't I? Candidate's screen name was unprofessional. Yeah, that's definitely a problem. Sometimes I've gotten emails from people. I can't help but we've publicly talked about when one of my friends who I'd hired, when he emailed me his resume before I hired him, he is vanillathunder@gmail.com. And it's because that was his thing he's a football player, and that was what he had on his football. He's a big dude, big white dude, and he's called himself, it was some joke of football, and it was his Gmail name, but he has everything tied to it, and he goes, I just can't change it, everything's on there, so yeah, my email came from Vanilla Thunder. It's memorable, at least. I've seen much worse. One of my other employees it took me a second because I didn't read it as Scuba Steve. His name's Steve, but it's actually, I kept jumbling the word together, and I realized, oh, Scuba Steve, he likes the Adam Sandler movie, and it said Scuba Steve and Adam Sandler, so that became his email address because he was young when that came out. So if it's funny, I guess it's okay, but think about that when you're signing up for a name. Candidates lied about absence. Yes. If you're wondering if any of this is legal for employers to look up, I'm not an HR attorney, but my understanding is completely, because my friend was really upset wanting to know, he was asking me about it because his daughter got fired for posting pictures of somewhere she went when she called off work, and her employer actually commented on her photo, did you forget you friended me? It was her boss. And just like, he's like, he can't do that. It was a good job, and she shouldn't have lost it. Like, she called off and said she was sick and then went wherever she went and with her friends. Posting it on Facebook, man, you're gonna get caught. Posted too frequently. I'll never forget one of my friends from high school who used to post constantly on Facebook how bored she was working for the place she worked. And then also went on a rant when they fired her. And I'm like, you post all day on Facebook, and then when they fired you, you're like surprised. But you spend at least part of your day posting silly things on Facebook. So this is something to think about all the time, keep it in the back of your mind. Coach, and kids are seeming to get this because they're growing up with this. They're getting it a little bit better. My kids don't post that much on there. Yeah.
I can't tell you, like, from our perspective at the university for the career side of it, because we help students find jobs and we also work with employers. We just flat out tell them in the presentations, we're going to check your social media.
Yeah.
It's not an option. They can do it. Anybody can do it. It's free access.
So many white-faced kids you get going,
yeah, exactly. And you do see some reactions like, oh shit, that
Yep.
crosses their face like, I need to take this off.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
And just along those lines, my mom works in HR, and they don't call for an interview because of what's on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Social media. So,
Right.
like,
So they
they
are
don't even
told.
know it's attacking you.
When I was recruiting agents in my agencies years ago, I always looked at Facebook, always.
Yeah. And it's, there's people who are just, you get that impression of them. They want to be contrarian. They want to argue with people all the time. They want to post every political thing on there. Honestly, you're not changing, I'll just throw it out there, you're not changing anyone's mind one way or the other about politics online. You're just ranting and finding people to rant with you. It rarely does any good. And employers are looking at that. Even if they are of the same bias as you, they believe the same things that you're posting, they also look at it going, wow, you could be a divider of my clients, because the world is not as far right or far left, it's the majority of center. So if you're off-putting to clients, you are now separating, if you're especially customer facing, you are now creating some dividing lines potentially that customers, especially if they know you, they get to know you personally. I wouldn't buy it from that guy, he supports so-and-so or such and such. I don't believe in his causes. Keeping those quiet is actually probably better for your employment opportunities. Let the retired people argue about it because they got nothing to lose. They can just rant all day. These young kids. I like this screenshot from Facebook because it's kind of funny. I don't believe it at all. To me, it's funny, but it says you're in charge. Manage your privacy, advertising, stay safe and secure, working together. One of the things about Facebook is some of the rules of just don't put it on Facebook. Don't trust them to keep it. because you agreed to the terms and conditions, and they may share this data with anyone. We have proved this. They have proved this time and time again. They've sat in Congress. They have rules that they can dynamically change. I don't know if anyone's really tried to decipher all the legalese that you agree to with Facebook that dynamically changes, and no post on Facebook that says, I don't agree to your terms and conditions. They don't really care. Post it all you want. They're like, hey, as long as you're here, keep posting more. So, because we need more information on you. So you can't really trust it. If you, they have a whole privacy checkup, and I see people say, well, but I changed these things not public. How'd they find it? Not too difficult to find you, even when you have it marked not public. Now, they just recently blocked this site, Facebook, because they got in trouble. StalkScan was the guy that wanted to prove a point, and the point was he made a cool service called StalkScan, so we can just stalk people online, even though you thought that information wasn't public. There was a way he was using the back-end data and slurping it off of Facebook, and you could check a few boxes. These are actually things you click on. You find a person, I chose myself, and then you choose interests they have and music they like, and then that he exploited this. What hotels did Tom check into? Every hotel I checked into. Who are my classmates? So found a list of my classmates. What events I tend to look. They have a lunch meeting, expo, after business hours, all the different events I went to with the chamber and things like that. This turns out, even though some of these aren't marked as public, this was able to pull all that data and put it together. As I was going to pull an updated one, but as of right now, the company's on hold because Facebook changed policies again and they haven't gotten back access to the data. But don't worry, it's still out there. So some of my rules and takeaways is, if you don't want it online, don't post it to social media. Don't want your parents to see it, don't post it. Don't want your kids to see it. Parents have embarrassed their children lately on Facebook sometimes. Don't post it. You don't want your employer to see it. Just don't put it online. You don't want some AI automatic system to start putting and building a digital signature based on what you post because it may not be flattering. Don't post it. That's my rules. Just don't. Stop and consciously think about the things you're posting and whether or not they really are relevant. Do the grandma test. Did grandma want to see this? And she might even be on Facebook, so she may end up seeing it. So. Think about what you're posting, think about what you're throwing out there in the narrative, because you're painting a picture of yourself. Make your life as awesome as you pretend it is on Facebook.
Is that called cyberstalking?
Well, yeah, there's me some side thing. But what if you didn't post it? This is a problem, but at least Facebook seems to so far have abided by this. This is a feature I recommend a lot of people turn on. People want to tag me occasionally in things because they think I want to join whatever rant there are and they'll tag you in posts, and I have no interest in participating in that. You can turn timeline tagging off. Who can post to your timeline? Me, you can't. And who can review the posts and tag me in things? I have to review it. So I get a notice anytime someone tags me. Jim Jasek tagged me in this event. And one of the things I did was I chose to approve it because I'm okay with being tagged in this event. Thank you, Jim. So I'm okay with it. I get tagged in lots of things I say delete to pretty much daily because, I don't know, people think I want to join whatever cause or rant they have on that day. So I think about that a lot. Protecting your devices. Now we're down to the physical area. We talked about all the software things you can do in LastPass. By the way, LastPass works on your phone and things like that. And we either have, well, the majority of people, this accounts for 99% of the market, you either an Apple or an iPhone, but these apply to both. The first thing is, it depends what you're protecting, but the pattern locks, any of you have this pattern lock? You don't have to raise your hand, but these statistically account for a majority of the pattern locks. They're actually pretty easy to figure out, and you can usually just take someone's phone if they're using a pattern lock, and you go like this, and you go, yeah, that's the pattern they use. You just got to figure out which corner they start in. They statistically start in one of the corners almost always, and these are the most common of all the ones that people use. I recommend a pin, a long pin that's a lot better than a pattern lock, six digits or more, something you won't forget so you don't lock your phone out. Phones have the ability to be secure, but they don't. So 44% of people start from the top left corner. 77% per user started their pattern in one of the corners. Most of the users use only 5 nodes, and a lot of them only use 4. Over 10% of the lock patterns are made in the shape of the letter, often representing the initial of the person or loved one. So yeah, my wife's, I think, is actually a T. I was looking at her phone. I told her it's a bad pattern lock. And why do I say that? Because there's a bunch of stupid posts she had to delete. So anyone who follows my wife were wondering about those photos that talked about her being in the bathroom. Turns out her friends, when she left her bar at the bathroom, they look, that was easy. And they got into her phone and started posting on her Facebook because they thought it was funny. So don't do that, is what I told her. No, I can preach cybersecurity all day, but it doesn't mean my wife follows it. I don't need to listen to you. What about fingerprints? There's something you are, and we can just unlock our phone with our fingerprints. They've gotten better, but I did like the first attack was called the gummy bear attack. It turns out they were depth sensing. So these fingerprints, they weren't scanning, they're actually using a depth sensor, a little piece of sonar that goes in there and goes, oh, I see the ridges in fine detail, so this is a good secure way, until someone took a gummy bear and they went, phone's unlocked, there you go. So, so it depends on how much of an attack you think it is. It's still good. Is someone going to try pushing a gummy bear in your finger? You're going to notice it. So how much do you want it? I hope. I don't know. It also, if ever law enforcement wants to unlock your phone, by the way, they have ruled it. You're not supposed to share your passwords because that's Fifth Amendment. That would incriminate. This is biometrics. This is something you are. You're not sharing a password. They have compelled people to put their fingers on phones. So if ever there was a concern, you have don't do that. But they got more advanced. Gummy bear attack doesn't work anymore unless you have really old phones. So now we got really advanced. The new Galaxy S10, this is great. It's got an amazing, super high resolution. So it has a high resolution camera too. So the guy took a thumbprint of, he was drinking a beer, and he took his thumb and put it on the glass, and he took a picture of the glass with his Samsung phone. Then he took the picture and he 3D printed it into a little slide right here that you're seeing this last one there, and unlocked the phone with it, with a slide that he then stuck on a rubber glove and unlocked it. Did all this with technology that's reasonably affordable to be able to do this. It's a little more expensive. He did have a 3D printer that would do this. They do make 3D printers that print soft things, including they'll get to the fine detail of a fingerprint. There's a write-up on this if anyone's curious. Like the guy wrote up, he's a hacker, and he wrote how exactly he did it. So pretty wild. And of course, now we have facial recognition on the phone, provided you don't have a twin. If you have a twin, they can get in your phone. If they look just like you, that can be a problem. And we did find out this costs less than $200. Turns out it's only looking at certain textures. So if someone looks reasonably like you, they put just a couple little changes to their face. This person has a write-up of how they were able to defeat the Face ID on Apple. They're using depth sensors, not just looking at you, which is cool. But once again, it depends on how much you want to be secure on your phone. What level of threat are you after? If a 3-letter agency is after you, go full security. Well, hopefully no one has that problem there. Yeah, so if not, I don't think better than nothing would be using the fingerprint. So just think about what level of security you want, whether you want to use fingerprint and digits and stuff like that. So it's just something to be aware of. Now our phones have destroyed the camera market. This is taken with my Pixel 2. I'm amazed at the photos it takes on there, but and no one really buys regular cameras anymore. Why am I even bringing it up? Because no one backs up the photos, and I get these smashed phones that come in, and people, but can't you? I have my kids' photos ever since they were born on here, or the last vacation we went on, I never backed up my phone. These are a couple cool free tools that you can back up your phone with. One of them is Google Photos, for photos specifically. This works on Android and iPhone. This is a free service. Now, good and bad. If you're a privacy and security person, yes, you're giving permission to Google to look at your photos. I do use this service, but I also don't take any personal photos on my phone that I wouldn't share in here. So if you decide you would like to do those, I don't recommend you using this because I have the panicked person to go, I logged into my Google account that you said to use. Yeah, all those pictures we took are on there. I think I know what you're saying, and I said, don't worry, they're a Google only person that gets to see them, but yeah, that's a consequence of using this service. Good news is your phone is backed up. They have amazing amount of storage. And by the way, this is where it gets it's creepy but awesome. You could type in things like dog, wedding, or sunset. I typed in sunset to pull those two photos up, pull them up right away. It auto-indexes 100% of your photos and contextually understands what they are so you can type in phrases and find those photos again, which is actually really cool. So when I typed in sunrise, a bunch of sunrise photos came up that I took. It's amazing how it can ID them. And then I have my son tagged in there, so if I type in Marcus Lawrence and we went to New York, you just get pictures of my son eating pizza. So the two things that I did for search query, you can search it just like how Google image search works, but you're Google image searching yourself. It's a pretty amazing tool to be able to pull, because some people ask you, how do you pull stuff up so fast? When I've emailed pictures to people, I'm like, dude, I use Google Photo. I can find something on my phone. If you said, Tom, when were you in Seattle in 2016 and you took that picture? I'm like, yeah, Seattle 2016. All right, what's the picture of? Oh, the boat. Yeah, the boat I took a picture of in Seattle. I can find that just by the combination of words and instantly have that photo from that time and that information on there. So it's pretty amazing. It can ID my son. And then go a step further, I type in like a double phrase. We went to New York, it finds them. So I really like it. Oh, your PC ran a problem that couldn't handle, now it needs to restart. You can search this error online, but it's something very serious. So we know that we can back up our phones, but the computers crash too. And so your PC can't even, as the kids would say. So there are ways to back up your computer for really inexpensive ways. Cloud backups like that. For business, I recommend something more enterprise, but for the basics, Microsoft, if you're a Microsoft user, the Office 365, they give you like 5 terabytes of backup for free, so you can have your documents. So if it's just a personal use, laptop, computer, whatever, sign up. It's free for Microsoft. Granted, same thing, the privacy concerns. You're now sharing documents with Microsoft, but it's better than so many people that daily, we have a retail store and they come in all the time. I lost all my stuff. There's data recovery companies that get it. They charge as much as $1,000 to start recovering files off physically failed drives. If it's even recoverable at all, free 5 gigs and a couple dollars if you have actual real storage, like literally like $5 a month and $10 a month plans for storage. Even if you're a small business and one-man operation, just store your documents there so you have a copy of them somewhere. That's a free service. So is Google. Same thing, they have, I think Google gives you 15 gigs for free right now. They have some $1.99 a month plans if you need more storage than that. They're relatively inexpensive for either one of these services. Their free service actually for a lot of people that just have a handful of documents for their personal works great. It's way better than losing these documents. And they'll sync. Both of them have sync tools that will, if I have more than one computer, I have a laptop and I have a desktop, it will sync the files between them as well. So pretty basic services, and their free tiers will take care of that for you. And if you have a business, they have corporate plans. Both of them have corporate plans if you want to have your email domain managed and everything by them. So they have plans. They're really relatively expensive. And if you're just looking for a standalone backup program, there's a lot of them out there. iDrive is one of them. We've actually recommended to a lot of people because it's probably one of the easiest ones to use. It's not something we recommend to necessarily our enterprise business clients, but for personal users that want to set up a backup plug on, they're pretty cheap. 2 terabytes of storage for $52. What is it? Yeah, it's an annual fee that they have. They're pretty inexpensive on their storage prices to be able to store a lot of data. So if you're going, okay, I need all this data backed up, I want to trust some company, iDrive is one of them I recommend. And they actually, one of the reasons I bring them up versus some of the other ones, they're one of the few companies that has an inexpensive consumer style backup plan that actually follows the laws of compliance with. If you work in any type of industry in financials, you know that there's a lot of compliances around your laws. You're like, you can't just stick it in the cloud. By the way, if you are running a medical office and you're HIPAA compliant, don't just stick it in the cloud. There are rules, by the way. You should look them up before signing up. But this is one of the companies you can sign up for if you're trying to do it on a budget and do it yourself, that actually has a process you can follow that actually follows all the different HIPAA laws. That's one of the reasons I thought they're kind of interesting. And that was Protecting Digital You. I am here for questions, comments, and yes, Jim.
Is there a way we can review these slides, say, on the computer when we get home?
Yes, I am going to, and just message me, email me. I have cards I'll hand out. This particular one, because I just redid all the slides yesterday and today, is going to be a YouTube video with a link to all the slide deck and all the links I talked about in here. So anything you want to like fork off and do like research on, I'll have all the links there. I'll have a YouTube video so you can watch it, and I talk fast so you can slow me down. And it's a lot of information. I just talked for an hour and a half here and just piled it on. It's a lot, but any links, I've got specific topics I dive further into on my YouTube channel. That's where I actually post a lot of stuff, but message me because by tomorrow I'll have a YouTube video of this. I'm just going to rerun this same presentation and have it all put together as a YouTube video. So you can, yeah.
Google Photos.
Yes.
So if you take a photo on your phone, it automatically
Yep.
goes to Google. If you delete it off your phone, does it delete it off Google, or can you delete it off
Yes.
of Google?
Yes. There's an option too.
Okay, so like if I go and I take pictures of a ribbon cutting for work, I don't have to leave it on my Google.
Nope.
Then I can delete it.
Yep. They let you organize. Matter of fact, it's got a bunch of cleanup utilities that are really cool. If you took pictures of receipts and things like that, it can say, hey, do you want to archive these out of your photo stream? Because it looks like there's stuff that you just temporarily needed pictures of. It's got really cool stuff. It also does a syncing thing. So my phone does not have those photos from Seattle on it. Matter of fact, I didn't have that same phone then. So what it does is it blends the photos that are actually living on my phone right now and all previous photos. And I uploaded everything I had digitally that I wanted to upload, I should say, from 1994 when I bought a digital camera. I bought one of those floppy disk cameras. I still have all those photos. I uploaded those going forward till 2019 on there. So I think I've got over 200,000 photos uploaded to Google, and they're all indexed. So I can actually pull up stuff and type in like 2003, and it will find those photos from trips I took back then and stuff like that. So it's really clever because it can pull up, and then you can save them back to your phone if you ever wanted to, and you can download them back from Google to your computer if you want. And by the way, if you have just a bunch of photos on your computer, you're not sure, but they're okay to, you're fine with sending them to Google. I always preempted that. You can get the downloader and upload everything off your old computer. Because people go, what do I do with all these photos? Like, I don't use this computer anymore, but I have a bunch of kids' pictures on there because, oh, my daughter was born, et cetera, et cetera. They have an option to upload all that on there. So it's one of the services I recommend to a lot of people that they've used it a lot. So.
So aside from being at the photos,
Yeah.
Who else has access to it if you set up an account to upload your photos?
You can create shared accounts. You can even create like a shared event. We actually use it for our business a lot. So one of
Like
we,
Shutterfly does?
yeah, one of the services, one of the things we do. So if one of my techs goes on site and wants to share some photos with me, he'll take it in Google Photos and then he'll group them together and hit share and create a shared folder. And then as we accumulate, because sometimes we're progressively doing jobs over time when we do new construction work for technology build-outs, we'll cumulatively have all those photos of that project gathered for each tech that was on there, gathered into one folder.
So other than that, no one else has access?
No, no. But technically, someone at Google probably could view
Okay,
them.
yeah.
Yeah. So I wouldn't rule that out. They have policies and privacy, but we'll just say that they can look at them. So keep that in mind.
You gonna call it today's policy?
Yeah.
That's the other.
Any other questions?
So many, I can't verbalize.
Oh. It's a lot of information. So as we had some takeaways, LastPass is great. Like I said, that's one of the ones I hope a lot of people start. Some password manager, and if you go, Tom, I don't like that LastPass, I like 1Password, that's fine too. As long as you're using something out there to keep you secure. I take no joy in telling people that I can't recover their data. I take no joy in telling people they were hacked. And some people think IT people are smartasses and haha. I'm like, no, I don't like telling anyone bad news. I would rather just help them through a problem. And unfortunately, we see them post-problem. We see them after someone sent out the emails, or like he said, someone pretended to be the CEO and sent all these things. It's so much more work, the level of work it is in post to fix something versus that little thing, just turning on that minor little inconvenient two-factor thing that sends a message to your phone. It saves you so much on the back end. So.
Question about the LastPass. When
Sure.
you're sharing passwords through there, does the person you're sharing it with have to have a LastPass?
Yes, they do have to have a LastPass account. That's part of it. I probably should have mentioned that. They do have to have it. There's also an option of whether or not you want them to see the password. There's a way around it. Like if you said, I don't want them to see the password so they can't actually see it and copy it and try it somewhere else. But there's a hacky way they could get around it if they're really clever with computers. So really trust the people you're sharing it with. But it's also convenient. Like we have a Netflix account that I share with the kids. My kids got LastPass. So.
Tom, I just wanted to thank you, this is great information. And LastPass has come into our life 3 times, because the last time you were here, you talked about LastPass. And whenever it comes into your life 3 times, you should really follow up with it. So maybe you try to tell us.
It's like Mark said, we've had to wipe his computer when there's a problem. I think very little, like people like, oh, is it hard to get a new computer? I'm like, no, not at all. Just get in one and just log into LastPass and all my stuff's there, and I'm up and running in like no time at all. I don't even think about that. So it's LastPass syncing. I have 3 computers and it syncs between all of them in real time. So any place I log into, work or here or home, it just instantly synced on there, and you can use it on your phone as well. So when I change a password on Amazon at work, I just open this up and log into Amazon. I'm just there. So it's those kind of conveniences. And it does change the dynamic because it actually solves a problem. Once you get over the pain of, I have a lot of passwords in a long spreadsheet, there is the initial pain of the change of I have to get them into it.
So do I have to go back to each one of these websites?
Yes, you'll have to log in. Well, for each one you log into, LastPass can ask to save it for you.
Okay.
So yes, it will do one that it does have. So each time you log in, so you don't have to do it all at once. You can do it over time.
Wonder if, okay, so I have a husband who's definitely not interested in being technologically savvy, and he screws it up every time. So we share, like Microsoft, for
Yeah.
example. So every time he wants to get in and he forgets the password, he changes it. But then I go to log in, and I don't have the new password, so then I have to call him, right? So if I get LastPass and I share with him.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to worry about it.
Right. Yep. You solve another problem that way. Yes. Yeah.
By saying that the same way, he also has to have it too.
We have to have
Where are you
LastPass.
signing up for it?
But he has to remember 1Password.
Yeah.
But he's gotta sign up for LastPass.
And he won't,
Right.
he can't forget that password.
But she can help him sign up for LastPass, and then
So I have to sign him up from his computer?
yeah. And then, yeah, and then you share the password to him, and then just remember his LastPass password, so when he forgets it, say, just call me, or write it, I know it's less secure, write it down somewhere where he can see it, because now it would take physical access to get it, but it's still better to have it that way, so hopefully that helps. Good luck. Password management's hard, there's no doubt. It's a complex topic, so.
I have one more question. When it comes to LastPass, obviously, when some people forget what their last password is it, you can't reset it, even if you needed to reset it, it's just whatever it is and that's it?
Yeah.
There is no resetting of.
No.
You can reset it, but you need to know your old password.
Okay,
Right.
well, that's what I was.
Yeah, it can be changed, but you have to know the previous.
Okay, as long as you know the previous, you can reset.
Yeah.
You just
Yes.
have to know the previous.
Yes.
And I wouldn't change it after that because it was some weird thing. I made it about you.
So yeah, you can change it, but you have to know it.
Know what-
That's an important fact. Is there anything else?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I'm just a little
sure.
confused on this LastPass. So when you go into Facebook, are you going to Facebook and LastPass
Yes.
knows to sign in?
Yep, because it's part
So
of your
you're not going
browser.
you're not going through LastPass to Facebook?
Correct.
You're just, okay.
Yep. Yeah, whatever site you're in, it just fills in. It goes, hey, look, that's the username and password. Now, LastPass will have trouble with some sites, and the reason why, behind the scenes, there's a field. That field should be called user and should be called password. Sites that aren't written very well, if you were to look at the code behind it, they didn't call it user password. They called it things like field 1, field 2, field 3. There are times LastPass has a hard time because programmers didn't do a good job. Major websites, no issues at all. Logging into most common websites, but you will find occasionally it have problems going, that doesn't look like a username field. But you can kind of help guide it along. You can go and view your password that you had set up for that site by going to what they call the vault. Where I showed I had all like 750 things, that's the vault. You can go to the vault and view a password and copy and paste it somewhere. So there's ways around those one-off weird sites that you run into that just don't comply with normalcy. Anything else? Well, thank you very much.